So one of the questions I get asked an awful lot is, what item in your camper van could you not do without? Is it Starlink? Is it the Max fans? Is it my fridge? Is it my air fryer? Is it my mobile router? Is it my Alexa speaker? Is it the solar panel? Is it my laptop? Is it my toilet? Is it my bed? In fact, it's none of those things. Well, they're all connected though, apart from one. It's my electrical system, and more specifically, my battery, my lithium battery, which I've recently upgraded. Let's go and have a look inside and see what my electrical system is made up of. The notable change is I have no more Renogy gear. So I've put this Fogstar Drift 460 amp hour battery in because it's the same physical dimensions, as I've said, as the Renogy 200. So I get 130% more power. I use Victron energy chargers to charge the battery. Now I've got a 100 volt / 50 amp MPPT charge controller, which is connected to my 600 watt solar panel on the roof. And then I've also got the Orion XS, which is a 50 amp DC to DC charger, which charges the battery as I'm driving along or when my engine's running in the van. So that is my new setup. So I gained a little bit more space there, which is neither here nor there. Everything else in the van roughly stayed the same. So one of the reasons why I chose the Fogstar Drift 460 was that it's a Bluetooth connected lithium battery. So I get an app so I can monitor my use, the percent of charge, etc, etc. It's heated as well. So if the temperature in my van drops below a decent charge temperature, then the battery can heat itself so that when my engine's running or the solar or whatever, it will allow that incoming charge still. There's a 250 amp BMS system in there as well, which is crucial for me because that means that I can actually still use my inverter. I cook on electric, so sometimes if I have two appliances and I'm cooking, I can quite easily get to close to 250 amps of continuous discharge draw from the battery. Now the charge rate is still high enough that even if I'm getting max solar and max engine power at 100 amps, this can take 100 amps of charge as well. So yeah, it's the same footprint as the battery I've taken out. It's 130% of the power with the same features as I've been used to. Yeah, it's a bit of a no-brainer really. And I did this after spending 3 months on a campsite. Unfortunately, Mandy, my wife, was really ill with sepsis. So she was in hospital for a bit, and then we were on a campsite which didn't have hookup. It was a great campsite, it was perfect for everything else. But yeah, I decided that sometimes in life you are stationary for reasons that are out of your control, and therefore you need to have a system that can sustain everything that you need for a longer period of time. And what I've found so far, like I said, I've been here for about 4 days now. As you can see, the weather is not particularly great for solar charging. I could run my engine if I wanted to, but so far I've not run my engine, and I'm down to about 72% on my battery. And that's with cooking, charging my laptop, working, having the diesel heater on, my fridge, lights, even my toilet has an extractor fan in there which uses a little bit of electricity, as well as I've got Starlink and mobile routers as well for internet access. So my daily usage is quite high in terms of how many amp hours. I would say roughly about 44 to 46 amp hours of power is what that entire system and me uses or consumes on a daily basis. So having this battery that's 460 amp hours of power is something that is a really good asset to have in the camper van to provide power for long periods of time when you're stuck in one location or you choose to stay in one location. I've also got a 400 watt folding solar panel which connects directly into my P210 Affery sort of power station, which is essentially my backup to my other electrical system. Essentially solar generator. So rather than having a generator to charge that, that is just storing like I say, just over 2,000 watt hours of capacity. So I can then put that back into there
or I can use this for cooking. It's set up in exactly the same way, is that power there goes through the bottom of my inverter to provide pass-through power to the sockets that are wired to the back of my inverter. So if my inverter's on, that's providing the power. If this is powered on, it bypasses the inverter and just provides power to the sockets directly without the inverter, without that being powered on.
So I've been parked up at this spot now for 4 days, and this is my way of testing everything out. I've got a lot of editing to do. I've been to this spot before. I know it's good for cycling and walking and everything else. The weather's not been great though, which I guess is actually one of the perfect tests to see if this new electrical system with the new battery is actually going to deliver what I'd hoped. And that is the ability to stay off grid, which is pretty much what I do all the time, and stay in one spot for a few days, maybe a week even, because you just never know. Sometimes you just never know what happens. And yeah, there might be an occasion where you have to stay in one place for a long period of time. And you'd want the electrical system to be able to sustain your power, be able to cook, heat, provide lighting, to charge everything up inside. So some people might be asking, why did you change from Renogy to the systems you got now? So the Renogy battery that I started off with was a 200 amp hour Renogy lithium battery. And I actually started off with 2 of them. Only one of them just didn't work half the time because it said that it was in standby mode. So I therefore took the assumption that I'd only need 1 battery. And that was when I was traveling around a lot, doing a lot of miles, and never really stayed in one place for a few days or more than a few days. It was also more in a summertime period as well, not winter. So the 200 amp hour battery I had was enough to sustain me day to day for a couple of days. The Renogy chargers as well, they all worked perfectly well, as did the battery. However, when I chose to change to the Fogstar Drift battery, I chose to change everything in there because the Renogy systems were all linked up via Bluetooth to a remote screen, Bluetooth app. They all worked well together. You took some of the components out and it perhaps didn't know what was going on as good as it should have done anyway, in my view. So you can always monitor the Fogstar battery via its Bluetooth app, just as you can monitor the Victron items via their Bluetooth app. But I wanted to monitor what individual things we're using. For example, how much does my fridge use over 24 hours? How much does it use to, you know, make a meal or something like that? So you probably know what a shunt is. Normally the shunts are sort of like a 500 amp or 300 amp shunt. And they basically tell you how much charge has gone into or come out of your main leisure battery. Now, what I've got are these little tiny shunts, 30 amp shunts from a company called Batmon Battery Monitor. And these allow you to put them in line with an appliance. So I can now work out exactly to the second what my appliances are using, and then obviously work out some historical data and see how much they've used over, 24 hours or a week or whatever. That's been quite game changing to understand exactly where my power is going. So if I've got my diesel heater on, I can see exactly how much power the diesel heater uses over, like I say, how many watts is it using right now? Or how many amp hours did it use over 24 hours?
But the clever people over at Batmon have taken this, well, many steps further. So yes, through the Bluetooth app, you can monitor, the exact use right at this moment in time via the big shunt or the little shunt. You can see historical data. You can monitor the watts, the amps, even the temperature of things. However, through the multiple connectors on the shunts, you've got an option to remotely manage other devices. So it comes with a temperature sensor and a logic board, as well as the option to connect to relays. And that really takes it into a next kind of like league thing. So for example, you could choose to have the temperature gauge inside your fridge and have the relay and the software turn the fridge on and off. So for example, I now know that my standby use of my fridge is around about 7 watts. So through a 24-hour period when the fridge isn't actually running, it's actually got 7 watts of standby power, basically just to have the little control panel on the front or whatever. Therefore, if I was to use the Batmon temperature gauge and relay control system with the inbuilt software to basically say, when you notice the fridge getting above 4 degrees, switch it on. And then once it reaches 4 degrees, switch it back off again. I will save the lost power, the standby power from the fridge manager in itself. I know it all sounds geeky. I did say this is very geeky, but I love it. For example, I could set a relay to remotely switch Starlink on and off. You have control over the relay, so you can either put an automation, so some parameters when it switches things on and off, or you can just switch the relay on and off as you need. The devices themselves have an inbuilt temperature gauge, so they know what temperature they're working at. So you could have it so that you don't actually need the external temperature gauge. You just use the internal one to say, you know, if something's too hot, for example, where my cupboard is and I've got all my NAS drives and electrical systems, if it's too hot in there, then switch the fan on at certain temperature. So you can do all sorts of things with it, including obviously just monitoring things and finding out where you're wasting power, perhaps. But yeah, I think these are absolutely way cool.
Wherever I want to install one of these 30 amp shunts, I can monitor how much power it's using. So for example, I know my router uses around about 7.8 amp hours of power every day. And that's based on mobile internet connection. Geeky, yeah, fair enough. But I can now understand exactly how much power I'm going to need in the coming days because I know historically how much power things have been using. They're dead easy to install, just like a normal shunt. In fact, I've got a normal shunt on my battery as well. So I can actually see how much power is going in and out of the battery independently of the Bluetooth app that comes with the Fogstar Drift. So yeah, pretty much a game changer if you want to do a bit of geeking out, understand how much power things use, and then like me, just basically put all that information together and understand, right, okay, so I've got this much power, my devices all use this much, I need to stay in one spot for so many days, you know, I might use the max fans less or the diesel heater less or whatever, so I can sustain myself to the amount of power, number of days that I've got left in my system. All right, as usual, everything that I've talked about is going to be linked in the video description down below. Take care, and I'll catch you on the next video. Bye.